So good afternoon and thank you everyone for joining us today on the latest in the series of the Planet webinars. This one's a little bit earlier in the month than we'd normally do, and that's something that will become evident as we go through the content today, that this is a big change and unfortunately couldn't wait until the end of the month. So we've brought it forward. So today we're talking about Microsoft licensing. It is changing, and the big question, are you ready? So if you haven't been on a Planet webinar before, then this will be a new slide to you. If you have joined us before, then I'm sorry, you've probably seen this and I've talked through it about 100 times. Planet IT, ultimately, we are a one-stop shop for IT, whether that be hardware, software, cloud services, licensing, phone systems, internet connectivity. We do the lot, and the idea is that we are that one source you can come to, and we ultimately have experts across the field, and we can deliver a great service to you. So, you know, we might be talking about Microsoft licensing today, but it's just one part of the bigger puzzle that is Planet IT. I'm lucky today to have my colleague Adam joining me to talk through this content with you. So we're going to play a bit of tag team through this content because it can be quite heavy going. It's Microsoft licensing after all. So hopefully that'll keep it a little bit fresh and you won't have to listen to my monogamous voice for the whole period of this talk. There is a question and answer function that you can use. So you can use the chat window inside Teams to drop any questions you have during the process. Now, the key here is obviously we're doing this in a different way to the way we'd normally do it, where we do have the ability to enable your microphones. The key reason for this is because we know this is quite a heavy subject and you may actually want to ask some questions. It might be quite difficult to express your questions through the chat box, but the chat box is there if you want to ask some questions, and we will get to them when we can, but we will open the floor up to questions and answers at the end of it. So the reason we're all here today is to talk about Microsoft licensing. There's a new term that I'm going to use quite a lot through this presentation, and Adam will do the same, and that term is NCE, or the New Commerce Experience. So if you hear us refer to that during this talk today, that's what we mean, NCE. It's a Microsoft term. They love to have acronyms everywhere. This is the latest one in a line of Microsoft licensing acronyms. So anytime I say NCE, what I mean is New Commerce Experience. So why is it a new commerce experience would be probably the first question I'd be asking if I was sat in your shoes. Well, if we look at the experience today versus the experience that Microsoft are taking us to, you'll understand what I mean. So currently, if you'd like to buy Microsoft licensing, you have a number of channels, actually 6 channels open to you. They start with the enterprise agreement for large clients, the Select Plus agreement, MPSA, you have the open agreement, you have CSP licensing or the monthly billing licensing, and then you have Web Direct where you purchase directly from Microsoft on a credit card. Now, Microsoft have realized that over the years that's become quite convoluted and it's quite difficult to know which licensing solution is best for your business, what gives you the best value, the best flexibility, and ultimately gives you the best value. So what they're doing is they are changing this model into 3 clear tiers. So all the other options are disappearing, and we'll be left with the EA or enterprise agreement for our larger clients, the clients who are over a seat count and are using a lot of Microsoft products and are purchasing those for their whole organization. We then have the CSP option, which is the monthly billing option where you work with an indirect partner, such as Planet IT, and we transact with Microsoft on your behalf. You leverage the discounts that we get because we offer the services to multiple customers. And then you will still have the Web Direct option with a key change. The Web Direct option is going to be there for customers who cannot get onto a CSP agreement because of credit concerns or being unable to transact through a partner. So this is going to be a very niche option, whereas at the moment it's kind of, for many businesses, the entry point into 365 as an ecosystem. This will change. And this will be for clients who unfortunately, they need to pay on a credit card and they can't set up an agreement with a partner like ourselves or move on to an enterprise agreement. So there's a specific use case for Web Direct, but it's not going to be the be all and end all that it is at the moment.
Microsoft's new Commerce Experience, or NCE, will fully come into effect in March 2022. I will give a breakdown of the key dates in a moment, but the thing to take from this slide is that March 2022 onwards, you can only buy per person or per seat licenses using CSP licensing. That is it. That CSP is your only option. For example, you cannot buy Microsoft 365 Business Standard, Business Premium, E3 or E5 licensing without a CSP agreement in place, as these licenses are seat-based. This means you will no longer be able to get per seat licenses on any other type of agreement outside of enterprise agreements. These also have dramatic changes coming, which I will touch on in a few minutes.
Thank you, Adam, for that. So we talk about NCE. We talked about the fact that it's coming. We've also talked about the fact that we're changing the licensing structure in terms of the seat-based licensing is moving away from being tied into multiple agreements, obviously, because those agreement types are going. But that's not the end of the change of terms. Microsoft are completely ripping up the rulebook, as it were, in terms of their approach. So the first thing is you will now be able to purchase up to 3-year terms for any Microsoft 365 or Office 365 product. So not only will you be able to go through CSP and buy it monthly, but you'll also be able to buy it on a 1-year, a 2-year, or a 3-year term. However, if you're buying licenses on a monthly term, there is going to be a price premium for doing so, and that is going to be around 20% on top of the already increased license costs, which will come into effect in March 2022. If you go onto an annual term, however, you'll have stability and predictability of costs because you'll be tied into an agreement which will give you a set price, but you will lose some of the ability to flex up and flex down that you currently have. Outside of that, Microsoft really want you to understand that you can blend short and long-term commitments. So you can have some users on an E3 agreement tied in for 3 years and some users on an E3 on a monthly basis if your workforce changes dramatically over the course of a year. So someone like a John Lewis, where they will increase their staff numbers massively during the Christmas period and then let those staff go afterwards, will be able to have long-term commitments for their core staff and then short-term commitments for staff that are joining the business during those peak periods. Microsoft are introducing as well a 72-hour cancellation policy. So if you ask your CSP provider, so Planet IT, to add a license for you and you no longer need it and it was made in error, that purchase, if it's outside of the 72-hour window, the cancellation will not take effect. You will not be able to cancel that license. You'll be tied in for the term of that license. So if that license is a monthly license, you'll be tied in for 30 days and you will have to pay for 30 days of that license. If you're tied into a year's agreement, it will be a year-long license and you'll have to pay that. That 72 hours is critical and it's not set by us and it's set from the point that license is activated on the portal by your CSP partner, or if you're buying web direct, when you buy directly with them. The importance of that factor is those are consecutive 72 hours. We can't control it. If you go outside it, there's nothing we can do or Microsoft will be able to do to refund that. The other thing that's worth noting is in that 72 hours, if you have added that license to a user, you will be pro-ratally charged for that usage. So the 3 days potentially you could be charged for at whatever the face value of that license is. Microsoft are also going to limit the trial availability it shows up in your portal. So currently you can try E3, E5, EMS, E3, E5. You can continually try different products and different stacks to see what fits for you. Microsoft are going to make this a one trial only approach. So if you want to try E3, you can try E3, but that's for your tenant and that's once. In the future, if you want to try that again, you won't be able to do that under a trial license. You'll have to purchase a license. They're also going to stop you being able to try SMB products on an enterprise level tenant. So if you're currently over the 300 seat mark, you won't be able to try a business premium product because that's not inside your product set. That ties nicely into this SMB restrictions they're going to be putting in place, which is around something people have been doing. It's not wrong, but it's not what Microsoft wanted people to be doing, which is you can technically license 299 users on Business Premium, Business Standard, or Business Basic, and then license your 300 users or above your 300 user count on an enterprise, an E3 or an E5 license. Microsoft are changing that. Once you've added 300 users that are licensed to your system, the SMB products will no longer be applicable, and all users must be on an enterprise level license. Now, this is something that was always the case. Microsoft led with this, it should be, but now the technical restrictions will be in place to enforce that, because that's what you should be licensing to. And Microsoft wants you to be doing that correctly. And then finally, the bit that's most stressful for all of us is there's new contractual commitments, because they're changing the terms, and you can now sign up for a 3-year agreement, which you might pay monthly. There's new contracts between both you as a end user and Planet IT as your provider, and Planet and Microsoft and you. This new contractual agreement will essentially protect all parties to ensure that when you're signing up for licenses, you understand that as a business, you're responsible for paying for those licenses, those subscriptions, to the term you agree to. And likewise, as Planet, as a provider, we have to agree to pay Microsoft for those licenses.
This is probably the first time you're hearing about this, so I'm sure you'll have lots of questions. You know, we're seeing the chat popping off already, but bear with us and we'll try to answer them over the next few slides at least. We have spent a lot of time with our licensing partner to make sure that we're ready to support you through this change. So let me quickly go through some key dates. So the 5th of October, which is today, this is the webinar that we're presenting to you right now, and providing you with all this information. Essentially, you need to start looking at this now to lock in current pricing before the upcoming deadline. 14th of October, which is the go live date of the NCE. And from this date, you will be able to start new CSP agreements. Note that at this point, existing licenses will still be valid and you won't see a price increase just yet. However, licenses or subscriptions only have until the 17th of October before they can be purchased under NCE and the new associated SKUs. 17th of October. If you don't want your price to rise, you have to have a new CSP agreement in place by this date. If you don't have a new CSP agreement in place, you can expect to see a jump of around 20% in March 2022. And then March 2022, which is the all-important date. This is the date that CSP pricing will jump up by around 20% if you haven't made an agreement by the 17th of October. This includes all legacy licenses that were purchased prior to the 14th of October. At this point, if you haven't moved to NCE, you will have up to 1 year from the original date of purchase before all your subscriptions are moved over to NCE. However, this may happen sooner as Microsoft have not confirmed a final cutoff date for this. The key takeaway from this slide is that as a business, if you want to avoid a price jump in March 2022, you will have to make a decision to move over to CSP by the 17th of October.
So let's just talk a bit more about how this experience looks. So as I've said, the current experience, you essentially have the ability to cancel any time, to add and reduce seats at no additional cost. Essentially, you pay per day at the moment. That's essentially the way that CSP licensing works at the moment. However, under NCE, you've got 2 options. You're paying monthly, where you have a minimum of a 30-day commitment to that license. So it's a short-term commitment, but the key is, if you turn that license off during those 30 days, you're still charged the full 30 days for that license. There's no pro-ratering in the system anymore. The same applies to the 1 year or multi-year commitment. You are committing to buying those licenses for a minimum term of 1 year, or if you sign up to a 3-year, 3-year. The important thing to remember is that you're committing to that term, and it's a rolling contract. So if you commit to a 1-month term, if you don't cancel it before the end of that month, it will roll into next month and you have that 72-hour window to cancel it. With the year agreement, it's the same thing. It will auto renew into another year, but you have that 72-hour window to cancel it. So it's really important now that you stay on top of when your start and end dates are. Now, we are going to support you as your provider with this, but it's very important to understand that there will be notifications sent out that will say you've got these licenses that are coming for renewal at the end of this month, the end of this year. If you don't tell us you want to cancel them, or you don't take the action in our self-service portal and cancel them yourself, you will be charged for them again.
So here's a brief look at the upgrade and downgrade options with both the current legacy subscriptions and the NCE, or new commerce. I think this will answer one of the questions that's literally just come through. Legacy, you can upgrade your current subscription level, and also, if you wish, buy a new subscription at a lower level and cancel your current one, so effectively downgrading. Also, you can assign and remove licenses from users at will and decrease your license count. You are only ever going to get charged for the number of days you use pro rata. With NCE, or the new commerce experience, you are free to upgrade your subscription whenever you need. But once you have upgraded, you have 72 hours to cancel and revert back if you need to. After this time, and that's 72 actual hours, not work hours, that's 3 days, you can upgrade, but you cannot downgrade until the end of your term. End of the month if monthly, or end of the year if annual. You will be charged until the end of the period for any decrease, so be aware that pro rata costs are all gone.
So a little bit about price protection. So I've mentioned this a couple of times. Obviously, at the moment, your price is the price you pay. So currently, your price protection is 12 months from the point that you purchase that first subscription. So say I buy E5 license today, until the 5th of October 2022, I am guaranteed that I will receive that same monthly price for that license and any additional licenses I add, providing I don't stop or cancel that subscription. Under the new model, I will get price protection for the term of the license. So if it's a monthly license, I will only receive 30 days price protection. If the price is increased by the end of the month, on my next bill, I will be charged at the new price for that license. So say, because Microsoft linked their pricing to the price of the dollar, that the dollar fluctuates massively, and therefore we end up with a large increase on the monthly ongoing cost, that we'll actually end up having to pay more on my November bill than I have paid for October. If you go across to the annual license, the same theory applies. The only difference is the price protection is for the 12 months. But at the end of that 12 months, you will pay the new license value for that subscription. So if those fluctuate as they are going to this time by 20%, you could potentially be facing a 20% increase on your renewal term. Now, the reason Microsoft have introduced the 2 and 3 year plans is to remove that issue, because your price protection, if you sign up for 3 years, is a 3-year protection. So therefore, you won't see a price increase for 3 years. However, you are committing to a minimum number of users at that point. And obviously, suspending subscriptions is changing as well. So if you suspend the subscription, it doesn't stop it being charged. It will continue to be charged for the remainder of the term. But the right access to that license, the ability to assign it to users and to move it, is removed. Whereas at the moment, you can still do what you want with the user, and you're not being charged for it when they're on a suspended license. So it's important to note that Microsoft are changing this quite dramatically because of the furlough scheme and the changes that happen because of COVID-19. They really don't want a position where a number of users are on suspended or paused licenses anymore. They are making it clear that you'll be still paying for that count. So this is the massive overall cheat sheet. It looks massively complicated, but I will talk everybody through it, so it's not too bad. So if we just look at, we have at the top, we've got the monthly, which we'll start with. So in this example, I'm going to purchase 10 M365 business standard licenses on a monthly agreement with the 20% additional charge that we're expecting to see on that. Now, if I decide to decrease those seats midway through the term, I will still be charged with those 10 seats until the end of the month. So the end of the 30 days, I will be invoiced for 10 seats, because although I've decreased them, I still have to pay for those 30 days worth of licenses. After that invoice date, the new 5 seats will continue on thereafter, which is that continuation line. If I want to upgrade, as always with Microsoft, you can upgrade at any time. You can increase the seats. The important thing to note is that if I add 5 seats, my 10 seat subscription becomes a minimum term of 15 seats. So therefore, they are pushing my minimum cap up, so the decreased charges will still apply. If I wish to downgrade or to cancel, I have that 72-hour window to do so. However, outside that 72 hours, I will be charged for the rest of the month. That 72 hours will start at the beginning of each term. So if the license was added at 5 o'clock on a Friday, in 30 days, it will be that same 5 p.m. that those 72 hours will start. And then obviously the final piece of that is that price protection. As you can see there, the price protection is enforced for the minimum term. At the end of that term, the new price kicks in. The same theory applies completely to the annual charge. The only difference you'll really see is that if we're decreasing the charge, so if we're decreasing the seat count after, say, 30 days, that at the end of month 1, month 2, month 3, I'm still being billed for those seats until month 12, when that decrease will take effect. So actually, on an annual subscription, if you need to decrease your seat count, there's no point in doing it until the end of the term, because you're actually losing access to resources that you're still going to continue to pay for. If you want to increase, you can increase at any time, but your downgrades are exactly the same. You have that first initial 72 hours to do it, and after that, it's considered to be a cancellation, and at that point, you'll continue to pay for it. So it's worth noting that, you know, that year, or if it's a 2 or 3 year term, could be quite a long period to continue to pay for extra seats. And then your price protection is, again, that 12-month, that minimum term. After month 12, you hit your new price.
So just a little bit about enterprise agreements. Now, we've mentioned enterprise agreements a few times within this presentation, and some of you on this webinar will no doubt have an enterprise agreement in place right now. Here are a few things you need to understand about enterprise agreements from March 2022. The minimum seat count for an enterprise agreement is increasing from 500 to 2,400. If you are less than 2,400 users, you have no choice but to move to CSP. For example, if you're a 1,200 user organization that currently has an enterprise agreement, you will have to move to CSP moving forward. Note that it may be possible to terminate an enterprise agreement early and take advantage of the price lock-in cut-off date of the 17th of October, but you will incur a 25% early termination fee on the remaining subscription value. So it's worth doing some calculations to see which way would benefit you better financially. If you reach out to our team after this call, we can help you work out with the real costs of this change. Microsoft Azure services, when on an enterprise agreement, require a new minimum transaction value, previously known as the Azure Monetary Commitment SKU, which is a minimum spend in Azure. This is a use it or lose it cost, and it is a commitment from an enterprise to leverage Azure. So if your enterprise is over 2,400 seats, but you don't want to use Azure in any way, then an enterprise agreement may no longer be the right choice for you. Your enterprise agreement is also locked to a single yearly decrease, which means if you are 5,000 users and you need to drop to 4,800 because you are downsizing, and then 3 months later you need to drop to 4,500, you won't be able to do this, as the initial drop to 4,800 will be the only time in a year you can decrease. This removes the flexibility that you had with EA agreements previously. And finally, it's worth noting that you are still responsible for the true-up charges at the end of each year with an EA agreement, which could mean you are paying more in the long run if you overuse your subscription.
On the lower end of the scale, compared to Adam's enterprise agreements, we're talking about open agreements. Now, this has often been the way that people have purchased Windows Server licenses, desktop licenses in the past. It's a really cost-effective method for doing so. So currently, if you're buying on an open agreement, these things on the left-hand side still are in effect till the end of December. So you can still purchase new software through an open agreement. You can still continue to use software assurance until the 31st of December. And you can still add seat-based licenses to open agreements until the 31st of December. As soon as the 31st of December kicks around, this is all change. So open agreements will now appear inside the CSP portal. So they'll appear under your licenses in 365. So when you're looking at your licenses that you've got to assign for users, you'll actually see a section for your open licenses. So your Server 2019, your SQL Server, your CALs, your RDS CALs will all appear in that section, and they'll be purchased via your CSP partner. So you'll come to Planet IT like you do to buy any other CSP license, and we will transact them, and they will go through the same methodology, in which case they will appear in your portal. The big change, though, is that software assurance is going. Software assurance will no longer be a thing. So this means if you buy Windows Server 2019 today, when Server 2022 comes out, you will not be entitled to upgrade to it. You'll be required to purchase a new license to do so. Now, the reason Microsoft are doing this very much ties into the Azure methodology, which is if you're renting a license with a server that you can then automatically upgrade, so software assurance becomes sort of null and void in that regard. However, if you're running on-premise infrastructure and you were planning on using your current software assurance upgrade rights to get you from 2012 R2 to 2016 or 2019, you have to do this before December. If you try to activate a server on 2019 using an existing open agreement license after the 31st of December, it will not activate. It will tell you it's an invalid key, and they'll require you to buy a new license. And all online services, obviously, as with all the other changes we've been talking about, will end up going through CSP. So there will be no option to buy year-long commitments on an open agreement and pay for them up front. So you won't be able to go, okay, I want to spend £400 up front to get my E3 license for a user for a year. You will have to go through CSP and either buy them on a monthly or a year-long commitment. That has been a whistle-stop tour of the 365 and general Microsoft licensing changes. What we're going to do now is we will go through the questions and try and answer all of them. If we can't answer your question now, following this webinar, we will send out both a copy of the recording, a copy of the slides as an attachment, and an answers to any questions that you have that we haven't been able to answer. Because as you're probably aware, we're the first people talking about this because this is very new to everybody. Microsoft only announced this was going to happen a few weeks ago, and it goes live in literally 2 weeks. So we're doing our best to make sure that you're fully informed, and we've been doing a lot of work to make sure we're fully informed, but hopefully we can answer all your questions. I'm just going to flick through some of them. I'm assuming you're doing the same thing, Adam. You're
Yeah, I've got the chat open. I'm just flicking through. So I alluded to it earlier, so I'm just going to jump straight in here. So what was the question that I pretty much answered on that slide? Need to find it now.
So I see a question here about Select Plus agreements. So if you've already got an agreement in place, regardless of what type it is, whether it's EA or open agreement, you can continue to use it until the end of its term, but they will not be renewable. So say you're in year 2 of a 3-year commitment, you will still be able to use year 3. When year 3 ends, you will be forced to make that move. So for people who are on Select Pluses or enterprise agreements who have got multi-year commitments they've made up front, you continue to gain access to those and what you paid for, apart from software assurance, moving forward until the end date. However, you won't be able to add additional licenses to that if they're not SKUs you've already purchased. So for example, if you've not selected EMS at the moment, you're not using the MS suite, you won't be able to add that moving forward. They'll tell you need to put that onto a CSP agreement because they won't want you making changes to existing agreements. They'll want you running those into the ground, essentially.
So I found it. So can a year-long term be upgraded, i.e. move from business standard to E3? I think I answered this, but yes, you can. You can upgrade, but you can't downgrade. That's the key thing out of this. You can upgrade from business standard to E3 and E5 if you want to, but once you go there, you can't go back down to business standard. I think that was short and sweet. I hope that's enough.
Exactly. I see a question here around business who can't purchase 365 subscriptions. So if you can't purchase Office 365, unfortunately, that's the only way to get access to seat-based subscriptions moving forward. So you'll still be able to get volume licensing for packages like Office and Windows, server and desktop. But for Office-based services, you will only be able to buy them through CSP. So if you can't use Office 365 for any reason, legal reasons, and you need to have access to the software, that will have to go through an open agreement, which will appear in the CSP portal, but you're not subscribing to any cloud services. So hopefully that ticks your legal compliance boxes in that regard. There's another question that I saw about how does this affect your charity prices or non-for-profit pricing. So this will affect everybody. So this is a uniform across the board price increase. So regardless if you're an education customer, if you're in the in an enterprise space, or if you're a non-for-profit space, you will all see this price increase. The price protection for non-for-profit and education has been getting reduced over the last few years, and that will probably continue. But it's certainly going to be an effect. And for anyone who's in education or non-for-profit on an enterprise agreement who is below that 2,400 mark, you will also have to make that move. So I saw a question on there around education and 950 pupils and staff. You won't be able to get an enterprise agreement for that anymore. You'll be able to get a campus agreement, but that campus agreement won't include your CSP equivalent licensing, so your seat-based stuff. So you'll only be able to get your servers and your servers, your Windows desktops and things like System Center through that. However, the key there is if you're not hitting that minimum user count, Microsoft can turn you away. And the aim of those campus agreements is to be for large organizations and not for smaller organizations. So you may find that Microsoft do say that you're not eligible for that anymore and to move to non-profit CSP. So it's something to be aware of.
And that also answers the question, does it impact E1 and A1, I believe, doesn't it?
Yes, yeah, A1, yeah, exactly. Yeah. So A1 will see the price increases just the same as everything else. Mm-hmm. So I saw a question there around software assurance and the ability to use kind of HA for SQL and Exchange. So Microsoft's expectation is when the software assurance ends at the end of December, that you will license to the true value of the potential of your cluster. So for example, if your HA cluster is actually 6 servers and you only really operate on 3 as your primary cluster, they would expect you to license the full 6. So you'll have to license the additional cores and the additional usage you could potentially use over that side. This will change the way people approach building HA clusters. The reason Microsoft are doing this is to force you towards Azure. That's the truth of it. We all know it. We're like, I'm not going to be upsetting anyone at Microsoft by saying that. You know, their dream is that everyone's on M365 and on Azure. So this model is very much designed to support that aspect at the cost of people running large on-premise infrastructure.
There's a quick one here, well, just while you look at that, and feel free to correct me. As far as I understand it, with the monthly year terms start and end, when do they start and end? As far as I understand it, it starts on the date that you take the agreement out.
Agreed. Yes. Yeah. So it's just, yeah. So the first day that your subscription starts. So as Planet IT, we will get billed throughout the month for various different businesses at different dates. But we will actually bill our customers based on month by month. So the first month you join us, you may well get a prorated bill as we would do it, where we only charge you for the first 13 days so that you're getting your invoice. But officially, from Microsoft's point of view, your first day of your term is the day that you start the subscription, whatever date that may be, the 13th or 14th, they don't really care. But that's when they consider your first day of your subscription to be. So So the question around software assurance, it will end if you've already got it and you've paid for 12 more months. It's not valid. They are full on removing the system. So anyone who has an existing software assurance agreement at the moment, it's only valid till December. So even if you have 4 years or you've purchased 3 years recently, your software assurance will end as of December because the solution no longer exists. They did put an article which we will share in the follow-up to this, which explains in massive detail why they've done this and how this affects you. But ultimately, you have no recourse for reclaim on funds because, unfortunately, in the terms of software assurance, it always said that it was a service that Microsoft could remove should they want to. And they've obviously decided to do so now.
Yeah, that one's out of our hands, unfortunately, isn't it?
Yes. So there's a question around perpetual licenses. So if you have no ongoing versus like kind of no ongoing costs versus this subscription-based model. So with things like Windows Server and SQL, obviously, with the new open agreements, you will be able to buy those licenses and have them, and you own them perpetually, but on that version. So they are kind of maintaining that, but they are very much moving away from this kind of perpetual license plus the ability to upgrade. It's very much you're buying it to fit your scenario for your current environment, and as soon as your software assurance is ended, as it does end, sorry, on the 31st of September, that license you have is yours, you own it, but you're stuck on that version to the number of cores, number of cows you purchased at that time. So it is a bit of a change. It's not a nice change, and there's nothing more I can really say on that, unfortunately. And there's a question about software assurance on premise. It does not continue after December. All software assurance ends as of the 31st of December. So January the 1st, there's no software assurance on any product. So you will be required to buy the new version when it releases. And we're expecting the new version of Windows Server to be, if not at the very end of this year, the very start of next year. So the question around licenses automatically jumping. So say you're currently 299 users and you suddenly become 301 users, your licenses won't automatically jump from business standard to E3. What will happen is Microsoft will notify us as your provider, and we will have to come to you and say, you've actually gone over that amount, we need to change you. That Microsoft will give us 30 days to make that change with you. Beyond that 30 days, at the moment, it's unclear what action they would take. I would imagine that they will reduce your ability to access features, so make your SharePoint read-only and reduce the ability of your license to do things. That's what they do at the moment. If you fail to pay, they don't cut you off. They just put you to kind of a restricted state. So I would expect that's the approach they would take. They want us to be, they want us to lead with you and say, look, you've gone over that count. You now need to upgrade. What we would have done previously, and what many businesses did previously buying from Microsoft Direct, is they would just buy the 300th user an E3 license and continue on. Unfortunately, that's not the way Microsoft wants us to continue. In terms of impact around KMS keying, I'm not sure how that's going to change. There's been no information around how they're going to do KMS pair keys and all that. I would imagine that as we get closer to the 17th, a lot of this information will come sort of dripping out of Microsoft. Obviously, with today being Windows 11 launch day, I think they're very much focused on not putting any bad marketing out there around price increases and license changes. I'm assuming once Windows 11's hype rolls away in the next couple of days, that they'll start churning out more documentation about how NCE affects everybody, because ultimately we've only got 2 weeks to start making changes before you're tied to where you are.
Yeah, I can't imagine the KMS key changing much anyway due to the nature of how it works. So, yeah, this is more for the online 365 stuff, isn't it?
Yes, definitely. See a question around kind of the motivation to stay with Microsoft, and obviously, being Microsoft, they believe you will stay with them because of the products that they have. Realistically, there is alternatives out there in the world of Linux, Unix, even Mac OS. You've got G Suite. Obviously, Microsoft will tell you, and they have told us many times, that this is the first price increase to hit Office 365 in 10 years. But if you look 10 years ago, the product set, which was Office 365, was very light. It was Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and email. If you look at it now, with all the additional features they've added to this, it is a very attractive offering. It's it does a lot more for your business. And I suppose the way they'd like you to look at it, and the way that I would go to any business manager or CFO asking me the question of why we should stay, is what we should look at as a business is what more we can do with the 365 platform, and what more we can leverage, and what other products we can lose, because 365 now offers that feature. So things like direct routing for Teams, being able to replace your phone system, the ability for Planner to be able to replace many other platforms that you may be using for project management. It's those kind of approaches. I don't see a lot of people moving across to Red Hat or other OSs because the support just isn't there. Obviously, at Planet, we will support whatever our clients have, but I don't see there being a lot of people jumping ship to move to other OSs, because ultimately, as soon as you move away from Microsoft, you've got that support issue. You've also got the fact that a lot of the software vendors don't manufacture applications for Linux or for other platforms to the same degree, and you do end up isolated very quickly. There's a very large medical organization I know of who made the choice to move to Red Hat in 2011. And after 2 years, they moved back to Windows because the staff training costs were so expensive that it was untenable to maintain that. So I think Microsoft have unfortunately got us all by a little bit of we don't have much choice. Certainly, if you reach out to your account manager at Planet IT, they will help you work out the way to minimize this cost and this change. The guys have all been going through training. They're all aware of the best way to keep the costs down and to avoid a massive hike, certainly in March, and then ways to make your licensing and billing more predictable moving forward. I don't expect Microsoft to be doing 20% year-on-year increases, if I'm honest. I should imagine this will be a big increase this year. We probably won't see any increase, and we might see a 1 or 2% increase moving forward. I don't think they're going to start chucking on 20-25% a year. So I'm just reading the next one. I realise I can't read and talk at the same time. I do apologise. So if you're currently sat just beneath that 300 user count, so say you're around 250, you're going to be 300 in the next 12 months. Your best bet is to upgrade to the license that you want to be on before the 17th of October to get your 12-month price lock-in. That way, because you can actually have below 300 users sat on that license count, and then any users that you add, the extra 50, 60, however many you add, will only be charged at that current license cost for the remainder of that 12-month term. So if you lock it in from the 17th of October, you will see no price increase until next October. And next October, we can look at annual or biannual, or even looking at 3-year subscriptions to try and reduce that overall cost. But definitely now is the time to be making changes. And I think, as Adam pointed out in his slide, it is the time to be making change now. You've got a few weeks where we can still provide you the old subscriptions if you're currently not using them already, but once we go past the 17th, we have to provide you with the new subscription license. So it's a case of use this time wisely, because we can only do what the portals allow us to do. So as soon as those SKUs get removed and you come to us and say I want an E5, we'll have to provide it under the new agreements. So it's just that we're working with you here more than anything. We're aware this is going to hurt. Even as a business, Planet IT still has to pay for our 365 licensing. We're aware that there's a cost associated with it, so we want to do what we can to mitigate the cost to you. I can't see any new questions coming unless I've missed any, Adam, whilst you've been reading.
No, I think we're pretty much up to date.
Perfect. Well, what I'll do is move this forward a little bit. So we're aware this has all changed. There's a lot of unknowns, a lot of questions. So what we're offering for anyone who's joined the webinar today for your organization is one of our Microsoft 365 health checks for free. The purpose of this is first licensing review. We look at the licensing that you have, what you're using, and tell you, first of all, at the moment, what's the best licenses you should be on. So are you not using bundles that could be saving you money? And second of all, what should you be doing with your licensing between now and the 17th of October to make sure that you're going to maintain the best value for the next 12 months. We then also look through your security, governance, adoption, look at your data locality, data protection rules, any backup you have in place for 365, and then make some overall recommendations. Normally we charge a service out at £199, but we understand the pain that's coming with these changes, so we're offering that for free for anyone who's joined us today. So just a little thank you for your time. If you do have any questions that you think I really should have asked that, all you need to do is just drop me an email, and I'll either answer the question. If I can't answer it directly, I'll loop in someone from our Microsoft team or from Microsoft directly who can answer that question, because we have that direct channel in. If you want to reach out to your Planet IT account manager today, they will be there to help you. That's what they're there for. They have this information and they can work with you and build through the kind of next steps and how to move forward. So if there's no more questions, I'd like to thank you all for your time today. I know that Microsoft licensing isn't the most fun conversation in the world, but hopefully we made it a little bit bearable.
Cool. Thank you, everybody, for joining.